So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure having you again. And as you know, I'm the son of a gun, and it's been a while since I spoke to you all. For those of you who have never found sense in what I talk about, yes, even Jesus Christ, no one found sense in what he was talking about. Actually, he was punished for calling himself an imposter of God's Son. And today, so many people are talking about Honorable Bobi Wine. Some people are talking about it emotionally, others are talking about it objectively, others are talking about it because it's just what is there to talk about. But I always stick to the objective side as far as talking about things. I am talking about it on the objective side. And what the fuck? Oh, sorry about that. Technology. Anyway, I always stick to the objective reason as to why I talk about everything that I talk about. And in this aspect, the reason why a member of parliament is disfigured, and just not disfigured, but battered like a thief, is because, understand, he hurled stones at the president's convoy. With all due respect and honesty, anywhere in the world, you will be killed at the moment. And if that is really true, then I think Mr. Museveni's convoy is the most compassionate one. And I would say, if I had the power, I would throw in prison all his security detail, because that is terrible. Why didn't you shoot? Why didn't we hear carnage of people that got shot? Many of them in numbers because they hurled stones at the presidential convoy. That's one side. That's actually one piece of truth that shows there was no stone that was hurled at the presidential convoy. Journalists were beaten. Now, I'm giving you facts. Guys in Uganda, you are so emotional and too jumpy. You never want to look at the facts. You never want to look at the basics. You never look at the semantics as to why things are done. That's the reason why we always fail in our reporting. That's the reason why we always lose what is being talked about. That's why we never find the truth. I'm not an investigator, but just imagine a presidential convoy having stones hurled at it. There's a head of security detail, his security detail, and all of them just look on. What sort of security detail is that one? And they didn't throw and they didn't fire at these people. Mr. Museveni, your security detail is the most fucked up one. And that is actually first proof that no one threw stones at Mr. Museveni. Nobody. It was something that, we were not there to see, but it's all clandestine. Who's sending me text messages? It was something that never happened. I might have not been there. Secondly, Kyagulanyi, I being an artist, I've looked at most of the artists that we have in this country, and he's one of those intellectual artists that you can imagine. He's not my friend, but he's such an intellectual. Such an intellectual. I do not see him do such a stupid thing. He did not do that. For those of you who are close to Mr. Kyagulanyi, you have worked with him. He's worked with many people. You would be witness to me. Those ones who are lying against Mr. Kyagulanyi, they do not know him. They do not know him. This is a very intelligent person. Now, another thing. Journalists were beaten up. And when they get beaten up, I'm asking myself, what did the journalists have to do with all this violence? Now, who was beating up the journalists? Was it the crowd of people? And why didn't they beat up these journalists the day before? Because I understand Chagulanyi was in Arua a day earlier, and he did all his work, he did all his campaigns and everything, and no one of the public came up to beat up the journalists. So who beat up the journalists? Okay, somebody beat up the journalists. Why were the journalists beaten? Because these journalists were going to be reporting the truth. And you know what the truth was? The truth was they were going to be reporting and showing into their video footage that no one threw stones at the presidential convoy. Absolutely. That's why whenever a journalist maybe got up to point his camera at where the action is, which action is going to be implicating someone, then the journalists got beaten. Because the journalists were going to be the first people that were going to be called maybe in courts of law to be witnesses. So they had to be beaten. So when you beat up a civilian, they run off. They're scared. So the journalists were beaten. And that's the main reason why the journalists were beaten. In this regime, when journalists are needed, they're soothed. When they are not needed, they're not told you're not needed. They are beaten up. Yeah. For those of you who are watching this away from Uganda, yes, this is how it works here. I don't know if it is humane or inhumane. I really do not know. But hey, that's how the shit here works. Excuse my rhetorical. Now, I did not know armored cars are only armored in the sides and the front windshield and not the back. I expected the armor, the bulletproof, has to be with all the windows. If someone has to cause harm to the president, is the back window a blind zone? Has anyone asked themselves, are all armored cars armored in all the sides, or they're armored maybe in the sides only? Maybe in the front and the back they're not armored. So how, if a bullet shall not penetrate a car, then how is a stone supposed to penetrate a car? People, whoever is better than this should school me about this, because honestly speaking, I do not understand this. This is bullcrap. In all, if the mob of people or the crowds of people threw stones at the presidential convoy, I'm very sure that was an open place and journalists must have been covering. Is there any proof to show that there were stones being hurled at the presidential convoy? Is there any proof? I want to see that proof that stones have been hurled at the presidential convoy, and then maybe if the carnage I had spoken about earlier on happened, then we would say they were reacting to the stones that were hurled at them. You guys, we're just young. We're not stupid. That's the problem with most African parents. You always have a problem with granting your children maturity. We are mature enough to discern, and we know we can add 1 to 2 and get maybe 3. So that's another reason why the journalists were beaten up. I do not see footage of the crowds throwing at the convoy. And I do not see the convoy also retaliate to the stones. But I hear that the convoy was hurled stones at. And understand the convoy retaliated. Now I'm asking myself, let's put logic down. The kind of logic my old man Tamale Mirundi always talks about. Let's assume stones have been hurled at the president. So army men and maybe his secret service, whatever they are called, they always copy. So they also wear suits. Is it the men that wear suits that chased after this mob of people and hurled stones? Or it was the MPs who hurled stones and these people ran after them particularly? But guy, mureke tusirwaza. We know we are intelligent enough twawula biwembwa kumumbwa. Just because we keep quiet. And Mr. Museveni, let these bastards stop lying to you. If you're the one who's telling them, grandpa, this is too bad for a grandpa to be doing. Terrible. Terrible. I wish I had the right word to explain this. So, did we get the soldiers that sit on the presidential convoy jump off these pickup trucks and go chase after people? And of all the people, they got the parliamentarians? Before I get to look at how Mr. Chagulanyi is disfigured and also the other MP, sorry about him, I wish he pulls out of the condition he is. It's a terrible condition. But I'm asking myself, before we get to look at what is happening right now to the MPs, we also have to look at what the reason was. Because if these MPs stayed in their wives' bosoms and maybe had sex, they would have not had that. Is that what the government wants people to do? Just stay at home and let it go? And after that, they go ahead and... Do they even listen? Do they even still remember that song? Chibonge chanini, vijana walihamia msituni, walienda huko msituni, kupigania demokrasi. Is this the democracy when you're asking people to stay home and fuck their wives? Because if Bobi Wine had stayed in Magere and made love to his wife and maybe got an extra child, this would have not happened to him. But if democracy calls for him to do what he did, went, looked for votes, supported other people that he has a common political opinion with, then that's democracy. He was exercising democracy. Demokrasia ambayo mulipigania mustuni. See, they're intelligent people like us. I know someday, if this ever ends up somewhere, and someone intelligent ever watches this, I shall be dead. You shall kill me. I'm very sure you might never take it off the server of YouTube. That's how weak people fight. They always kill the bodies, forget the spirit lives on. So, all these things, I'm asking myself, I do not want to look at what is happening right now, Mr. Chagulanyi. Not because it's not painful, not because it's not sad, not because it shows we are not a democratic state, but because of what happened. Logic, if we get the story of Eddie Awe, who was in Arua with Bobi Wine, and laid down, you get to find out that it's a more true story. Bobi Wine can only be found in a hotel, in his hotel room, where the rest became history. It would be very hard to have someone get him and do that to him. Who caught Bobi Wine? Let's start by catching him. Who caught him? He was hurling stones at the presidential convoy. Who caught him? Was it the police around? Can any policeman get up and say he caught him? Guys, if you have to start investigating, let's start with that policeman. If he caught him, who did he hand him over to? Who did that person hand him over to? When he caught him, did he hand him over to the men that wear suits? And those men were handed him over to the men that sit on the president's convoy, because they're the ones that always wear army uniform and big boots, and they're the ones that maybe would have done that, which means they were goons that are working for the government. of Mr. Museveni that were brought into Arua and said, you are going to butter these motherfuckers. And they did the job well. They did the job well, pretty much. Let's start by those tips to start our investigation before a whole army officer gets up and wears all his pips and goes on to YouTube and starts telling a lie and starts supporting a lie. That was a lie. That was a lie. Mulekerawo tulimba. And this is some piece of advice the Baganda say, no muto gwoza dda akuba engoma n'ozina. Mr. Museveni, I don't really think Morgan Shangarai died, and when he died, and the tricks that Mugabe worked on him will work for you. I do not think so. His tricks were his tricks, and I guess you also have your own tricks. Find other tricks. But this business of battering up people, I don't really think it will help you. The Baganda say, omukisa gw'embuzi si gwe guyise embwa mu malagala. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the son of a gun.